Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're back working on this engine again for my buddy Mike. So this engine here, I got the timing cover back on and got the water pump on. I like to put these on as a unit since the water pump also holds the timing cover in certain areas. So I'm going to go ahead and show why I do that, but I'm also going to show you why I recommend putting the screen inside the high pressure oil reservoir. All right, I'm going to go ahead and show that to you and show you why. So when you have your timing cover on these trucks, this bolt, this bolt, this bolt, and this bolt. Those bolts go through the timing cover into the block. So whenever you are attaching your timing cover, now you only have this bolt, this bolt, this bolt up here, and this bolt down here. Those are the only bolts that hold the timing cover other than the other ones that are with the water pump. If you want a good solid seal when you're resealing your timing cover, put the water pump on with the timing cover. It'll hold the whole timing cover on, and that is a better way to get a good seal. Obviously, we used the gray RTV over here and on the bottom here, and then also at the very, very top across the top. Don't use the ultra black, use the correct stuff like the TA31 or the T4042 from International. The next thing, you see all these specks down in this timing cover reservoir, or this high pressure oil reservoir here? All right, see that over there in the corner? There's some more down in this edge. There's some dirt over here, all right? And then this is down in the reservoir itself. I'll have to grab a light for you here. All right, we got a light here. See some specks there. We'll zoom in some more. See all that down in there? That's all dirt. It's all dirt. All right. You can even see sides of it on the sides of the screen there. You can see some specks. That's all dirt. Now, that dirt is going right into your high pressure oil pump, right into your fuel injectors. Now, this is all dirt from the oil pan, dirt from your oil, soot, anything that gets in the oil, bearing contaminants, anything like that. So I always suggest whenever you're doing anything like this, that you service this. And if you have to purchase a spacer kit from Diesel Site or Riff Raff to put this screen in, I highly suggest doing it. And that would be why. So this is why I suggest putting in the screens for these 7.3s, because this is your reservoir here, down here for the oil. And here's your high pressure oil pump as well. And if you have a 94 or a 95, I really suggest doing this, because the 94, 95 trucks, they only have an O-ring on this side, and then this is all RTV. So anytime you service your high pressure oil pump, you need to get rid of all this stupid RTV, which sucks to get rid of because you don't want it to go down there either. But whenever you do the spacer, it gives you the full O-ring down here. Actually, it gives you the O-ring over here with the RTV, and then your spacer, and then your top O-ring, which you can do that instead for your service. So you could actually leave that spacer on there and then pull the top reservoir off of the spacer. And I have a video covering that spacer as well, and you can watch me install that on the Lawn Ranger project. However, this was a good example of why I suggest the screen. All that dirt can go in and cause havoc, not just for your high pressure oil pump. You know, the high pressure oil pump's a piston driven pump. It can grind it all up, shove it through, it doesn't care. However, the injectors are very, very, very picky about their oil. Very, 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 very small pieces can cause you problems. Now, we're working on this engine again, like I had previously stated. Valve cover is back on. We are still waiting for the passenger valve cover. And I had said in the previous video about the glow plugs that we have the oil rails in. So we can see the plugs in there. And then we have the water pump and timing cover installed. Our next step for this is going to be putting the oil pan on. We are going to get that put on as well here in a second. But wanted to go through because I was pulling this off to service this. We're going to clean all this up, but I wanted to show you all the dirt that was inside that reservoir. All that dirt can cause you problems over time. So if you wanted to make your truck last longer, I highly suggest putting in the spacer if you have a pre-99 truck to use that screen. Luckily you guys with the 99 and up trucks, they have the screen in the timing cover factory. That makes it a lot nicer. But we're going to go ahead and keep plugging away on this, and we'll get some more shown on here. We got everything cleaned up here. I like to suck all the oil out of there, and that's just oil residue coming back from the high pressure oil pump itself. You can see it's nice and clean in there now. And then also this is nice and clean in here. So no more grime or dirt like that. Also cleaned out the top, get all the residue out of there. And then we have our new gasket to go in here. So this is a male or Meili, or however you want to say it, timing cover set that we have here. And goes on just like that. No RTV on these, and that's it. So this only works if you have a 99 and up truck, okay? If you have a 98, or I'm not even sure if the early 99s are this way. However, if you have an OBS truck, you can't just stick this screen in this timing cover. You need the spacer. And I'm going to reference you to the video again about the spacer that I was installing for the Lawn Ranger project, okay? The guy that put this screen in his 96 timing cover and broke the timing cover right here. So this truck can take this gasket because it is a 99 and up truck. But we're going to go ahead and anti-seize the threads for these bolts. I had to heat this bolt up to get it out. Obviously we're doing steel into aluminum again, so we get anti-seize on the threads. Only because you have dissimilar metals, they will corrode and get stuck together. And nobody wants to be drilling this out. It's no fun. However, so we're going to go ahead and put this back together, get that all torqued down. And we have a new O-ring for the top here we will be putting on as well. But wanted to show you this all nice and clean. That's something I like to do whenever we're putting this all back together. And obviously before this engine goes back in the truck, we will be filling the oil ports. So just like this, and the heads themselves, we will be filling those. That's just common practice for me anymore. It makes life a lot easier. But we will be putting this back together here, hopefully flipping this over here shortly to get the oil pan put on. We have our gasket here for the top lid. Now, like previously mentioned, we are working on a 99 and up truck. So if you have an OBS truck or an OBS engine or OBS timing cover, you wouldn't have this piece here. This is all part of one unit on an OBS truck. Take your high pressure oil reservoir and make sure it's nice and clean. And set it down on here, but make sure that your gasket is seated down in the inside there because you don't want to cut it. Take your lid now and place your lid on. Once again, making sure that your gasket is seated. And as you can see, it wasn't seated there for a second. Now, we're going to go ahead and anti-seize our threads here and put these down inside. Always start these by hand. Then your two studded ones go in the back. Now before we tighten these up, we have the bolts for the cap here. Once again, anti-seize on these and get them started by hand. The reason I like to start these other ones first is because your main bolts pull the cap down, but if you don't have these all tightened up first, then you can possibly get a misalignment and it cause you issues. Now you can also put this cap on first before you put the reservoir on. That's one option. I'm just doing it this way to show you the process. And we're just going to go ahead and snug these down. And those are a T30. Now these are 10. So this one didn't like to go in there too much because this was the one I had to heat. So there's probably still a little bit of corrosion on the threads. I didn't want to run a tap down in it because it's aluminum. There's a very good, strong chance that we could screw up the threads more than they already may be. Then your studs are 13. We'll do this last one here. I always go over these by hand. The torque spec on them is not a whole lot here, so I like to do these by feel. Because you are looking for an O-ring seal. So your O-ring will hold the seal as long as these are snug. Then go over your torques again. And if I can find your values for torquing these down, I'll put them here in the video. That way you at least have them. I know it's not much. I'll probably come back and retorque these anyway just to be double sure. But that's probably right in the range of 16 to 18 foot-pounds, somewhere in there. But that is the timing cover reservoir, or high pressure oil reservoir install. We are working on this engine a little bit here and there, but wanted to get this timing cover in, wanted to reseal this high pressure oil pump, and I wanted to see how much crap was in this reservoir in this screen. That's something that is something you should do, when you're servicing your engine and you have it out. Pull this all off and make sure it's nice and clean. The only thing we didn't do was we didn't pull the timing or the high pressure oil pump off the timing cover. And the only reason we didn't do that was because it's not leaking. It's got a good gasket on it. There's no point in breaking the seal up front and breaking the seal in the back. It's not leaking. The high pressure oil pump is nice and strong on this truck. It's only got 100,000 miles, so we just left it on there. We are, however, going to be replacing the quick disconnect fittings with a set of CNC braided lines. We will be doing that as well. That'll be a little bit later in the video. However, we're going to go ahead, and I've been saying for a while now that we're going to be flipping this engine over to the oil pan, but this was the main concern. We're going to go ahead and put our fittings in here. So we have the standpipe that comes up for the heater hose, and then also a coolant temp sensor, which we will be putting in here. We don't have the thermostat yet, so we won't be putting that on yet, but we will be putting that on eventually. And also we are waiting for the gasket for the low pressure oil pump. So we will be doing that as well, just not today. So we're going to go ahead and get this flipped over. I'm going to move some stuff around here and get the bottom of the block cleaned up. That way we can get that oil pan put on. We finally got this thing flipped over. We're going to be putting the oil pickup on. And this is the reason why you always want to have a 7.3 outside, out of the truck, upside down, because of this guy right here. As you can see, it bolts onto the timing cover, and it makes getting the oil pan off a little difficult. But before we go ahead and put this on, we have two gaskets here. So I'm going to bring these over and show them to you. As you can see, they're not the same. So the one on the lower side here, I do believe that is 96 and up, or 97 and up. There's a serial number breakdown for these where they swapped the oil pickup from one side to the other. And I believe that this guy is the 94, 95. However, whatever you took out of your truck is what you should put back in. You want to make sure that you have the correct gasket to put on your pickup, because one does not fit the other and vice versa. So on this truck here, we're going to be using the short fat one. And if you want, you can put a little bit of lubrication on this O-ring, but it does just slide on there like that. And then it goes down in the timing cover. Now that does fit in there just like it does there. So you want to make sure that you put it in there and it stays there. And get your bolts started. Now there is this bolt here, and it goes over onto the main. I always tighten these up first because that sets your height for this back piece here. There is a small little bit of adjustment in it, so you always want to make sure you tighten up the pickup on the timing cover before you tighten the pickup on the main. And like previously, just going to get it started with the impact here. Now that it's snug, go ahead and tighten it down with the ratchet. Now I did not put any anti-seize on these because you do have a pretty good oil bath that keeps these well lubricated, so those do not need to be anti-seized. Plus you don't want those coming out anyway. And then you can come back here and tighten up the pickup on the main, because now this is where this wants to be. You won't be putting any undue stress on the timing cover. And that is the pickup install for this. Our next order of business here is going to be make sure that we have the surface nice and clean, and then we'll go ahead and put a layer of RTV on here, and then that'll be it for this video. Because as you turn this over, you know, I've turned this engine over at least a dozen times on this stand, and it doesn't matter how many times you turn it over, oil still finds its way out. And you know, you can't have oil be getting into your RTV here. So we're going to set this oil pan on, and that'll be it for at least 24 hours before I even come back and look at this engine to do anything else to it. But I'm going to go ahead and get that put on. Once we get the oil pan on, I'm hoping to have the engine mounts back. We can get those put on, and then I'll go ahead and install the oil cooler and the manifolds. It's just the system that I like to do them in. It makes my life a little bit easier. You're not trying to fight around stuff. So I have covered cleaning these up before and installing this oil pan. I'm just going through and making sure that there's not going to be any residual oil that's going to be flowing onto the surface here once we get it all put together. So this is just I'm not cleaning the mains off with anything, just giving them a wipe with a towel, a paper towel, something that's not going to leave, you don't want to leave a bunch of lint and stuff laying around. So just cleaning these off because they have gotten a little bit of dirt and fuzz on them from cleaning everything prior to this video. So just wiping all that off because it doesn't need to be down in the engine. And then once we get the oil pan on, you can go ahead and start to really clean everything because now everything's sealed up and done. But I'm going to go ahead, clean this up, get a seal on it, and we'll cut to getting the oil pan put on. So we have the oil pan all cleaned up. Now we did this the last time. I always like to take all the paint off the mounting flange, and a lot of guys won't take the time to do it because they figure if it wasn't supposed to be painted, then they shouldn't have painted it. However, we take the time to take that off of there, make sure you get a nice good seal with the RTV here. Now, the one thing we're going to be doing different on this oil pan is we're going to be using this adapter. All right. So we have this. We're just going to set it on here loosely where it's supposed to be. Now we have our new dipstick tube and the O-ring, which is lubricated. All right. Now, I'm going to put this in there and make sure that it does line up. As you can see, we are indexed forward towards the front of the engine instead of the straight up and down like the OBS would be. Now, these have a detent on them. However, I'm going to make sure that this is going to want to go in here, and I will probably end up leaving this in. So it just slipped right in there, which is perfect. And then you want to make sure that you can get this all together. All right. And that's perfect. That's great. Now, that means we don't have to be screwing with this anymore. You don't have to try to modify it or anything like that. So now that we know that that fits on there, the O-ring comes right back out, which is great. That lubrication that we use does a good job. This is not a Ford O-ring on here, and I'm not real crazy about how it slid in there that well. I may end up changing that out to a Ford O-ring. I do have one here, so I might do that just to make myself feel better. I like things to be perfect. But I'm going to go ahead and re-wipe this flange down on the pan, re-wipe the flange on the block and timing cover, and then go ahead and get this thing set on there. But wanted to make sure that you always check the dipstick before putting the oil pan on. We got everything wiped off. We got our RTV back on. So you only get a couple minutes to work with this. So get your bolts all started here. And go ahead and grab your impact, ratchet, whatever you want to do, and just snug these down. Once again, you only have a couple minutes to work with this before it starts to set. So we're just going to give these a little bit of a snug by hand here. And then we'll come back and torque them. Want to make sure that we get a nice, good, even pressure on these. But you also don't want to smash all the RTV out of there either. So you can see that we have a nice little line of goo coming out there. The front looks really, really good, and the back looks just as good as the front. So you want to see a little bit of RTV coming out the whole way around. That's what you really, really ideally want. And then obviously where your timing cover and your block meet up, you want to have a little extra. And then obviously also in your corners of the oil pans, you want to have a little bit extra. Now on the last oil pan, we used a TA31 Ford Motorcraft sealant. On this one, we use the International T442 silicone rubber sealant. This is the same thing as the TA31. It's just got the International brand on it. Now, this stuff follows the same directions as the TA31. You only get a couple minutes to work with it. When you buy the rear main seal kit, this comes with it, and there's actually enough in here to do the whole motor, which is very, very nice. But if you don't want to buy the TA31, you get this with your rear main kit from Ford. However, this stuff is a little bit harder to put on because you can't get it in the caulking gun tube, which, the tube makes it easy to go around everything, and it's a lot easier on your hands. But we used a Ford oil pan on this truck here, and we're going to let this sit for about a day, if not longer. But this was my goal for the day. I wanted to get the oil pan, the timing cover on, get the high pressure oil reservoir resealed there, and get this motor sealed up a lot more. Hopefully we'll get the engine mounts back here soon. Like I said, we sent them off to get sandblasted and painted. We get these put back on, then we can start going ahead and getting everything else installed. One other thing before you put your oil pan on. These bolts here, I always chase the threads on the bolts, and I chase the threads in the block. RTV gets stuck down in this block just from getting the oil pan put on. You want to make sure you get as much of that out as you can. That makes sure that you don't bottom your bolts out, because if you bottom the bolt out in the RTV, you won't get a good seal on your block. So always make sure you chase the threads in the block and chase the threads on your bolts before reinstalling. Make sure that they're nice and clean. Like I said, we got this adapter on here this time. We didn't do the weld in. This is a very nice adapter, and this will be a serviceable item as well. So if this were to ever leak again, you just pull it. You can take it out of there. Pull your starter off, take this out, and you can reseal the O-rings and put it back in. You don't have to worry about losing anything in the oil pan. But that is all we have for today's video. The goal today was to get this oil pan put on and the timing cover. So I appreciate you guys following along with these projects that we have going on here. And I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel so we can keep videos like this rolling. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.